If you're tired of having your creative writing projects sit on the shelf for months and want to actually meet your goals of finishing your novel, finishing your short story, and getting it published, then this video is for you. Hi, I'm Megan. I've been a professional writer and project coordinator for 5 years, and I want to help writers organize their projects in a way that gets them from idea to actual finished product that they can send out into the world. So it's really easy as writers, I've done this myself, to get so inspired by an idea that you're like, I just have to write this. You gotta love that creative energy, you gotta have space for those ideas to come, and you gotta write them down before you forget them. But the problem with this method sometimes is that it's really easy to get stuck and then be like, oh, I don't really know where to take this story anymore. I'll just put it over there because I don't really know what to do with it. So the whole idea behind this project plan is to keep you on track with your project so that you can actually finish it. It just gives you a framework to know, okay, I left off here, here's how much I still have to go, and here's the deadline I'm shooting for. So let's dive in. What are the 5 phases of organizing your writing project? Phase 1, consider. This phase is all about figuring out the bare bones of your story before you start writing. When you start your project considering all the variables that need to go into your story, you're going to set yourself up so much better to not get stuck in the middle phase where you're actually writing and drafting and revising. So what do we need to consider before we start planning and writing our projects? Number 1, your premise. Now, I'll talk about this in a different video in more depth, but your premise is essentially what your novel is trying to accomplish. Some people call this a philosophical conflict. You might have heard it referred to as like man versus man versus nature. You're sort of giving your novel something to prove. So every story needs a premise because from that premise, you can really flesh out a whole team of characters, and that's the second part of the consider phase. So the first part is figuring out a premise for your story. The second part is fleshing out your characters. Each character can have a different viewpoint on that premise, and that makes it really easy to figure out the dynamics between your characters, what their personalities are like, what their backstory is, how they've gotten to believe different things about the same premise. So your main character might totally disagree with the premise. They're fighting it the whole way, and then through your story, they come to accept the premise. Your secondary characters might have a varying degree of how much they agree with or disagree with the premise. And then number 3 is outline your story. So once you've got your premise and once you know who your characters are, you can start outlining your story. And this is the part where people are like, oh, I hate outlining. But it's so much easier once you know who your characters are and where they're trying to go, what trajectory you have them on based on your premise. So then you can outline your novel and create events that naturally arise from the conflict between characters who think differently about the same premise. So once you have an outline for your story, you can move into phase 2. Planning. Arguably my favorite phase, but I do love a good plan. So the planning phase is one of the bigger phases. You're going to put in that work up front to plan your whole process of how you're going to write this story. That way you have to do less work, less thinking later, and it frees up all that mental energy to just focus on writing. So I'll go into the project planning side of things in more depth in a later video, but there are a couple of things you need to keep in mind to make your plan. Number 1 is, what's your timeline? When do you ideally want to have this done? And my tip for you is give yourself extra time. Give yourself more time than you're expecting. So you don't want a deadline that's so far in advance that you're like, I don't have to work on that today, I can put that off. And then you're going to procrastinate and end up scrambling to finish it all at the last minute, and it's just going to not work. But don't set yourself a goal that's so soon that you're like stressed about it and you really secretly know you're not going to be able to finish it. So take a look at your life, take a look at your routine, take a look at what's worked for you in the past, and make your timeline according to that. Part 2 of making a plan, what are your deliverables? What is a deliverable? A deliverable is one part of the project that either helps you keep moving forward or is just a section that you can say, okay, that's done, move on to the next section. So what does this look like for writers? A deliverable could be your outline, your first draft, your first, second, third, fourth, and fifth revisions. By determining your deliverables, you're able to break your project into different chunks. And you can say, okay, even though the whole project is due a year from now, and that's like forever, I have to get this first draft done by next month. So it keeps you moving forward because you have smaller goals to meet in the midst of your bigger project. Third thing you need to know when you're making a plan is, when are you going to work on your writing? If you know you can spend 2 hours every evening working on your writing and you want to do that, put that in your plan. If you know, man, the only time I have to write is like half an hour at 5 o'clock in the morning before the kids wake up, that's it. Make sure you adjust your timeline accordingly. Okay, moving into phase 3, create! Oh, the best part of the whole thing. Okay, I know I said I love the planning phase, but this is really the most fun phase. So phase 3 is pretty simple. You just work on your project. That's pretty much it. Phase 4 is track. This is crucial to finishing your project. You have to track your progress. There's a saying in project management that projects fail for lack of planning, but I also think they fail for lack of tracking. You're saying, okay, here's the goal, here's the plan I set for myself. Am I moving toward it in a way where I'm going to meet my goal? If the answer is no, because you're a couple months into it and you're like, man, writing at 5 o'clock in the morning for half an hour just isn't working for me, that's fine. Don't throw away your plan. All you have to do is adjust your plan to say, okay, let's revisit this. When am I going to write? Do I need to extend my deadline a little bit? Do I need to push back certain deliverables so that I can continue making progress? So the tracking phase is all about updating the goalposts of your project if you need. Now it's easy to be like, oh, I can change my deadlines, so I don't really need to take them seriously. I can just adjust them. Treat them as real deadlines. I mean, if you're serious about writing and you're serious about getting your work out there, you've got to treat it like it's part of your business. It's part of your work. It's important to meet your deadlines. And if you need someone to keep you accountable, I'm your girl. Okay, so that's tracking. Moving into the final phase. Phase 5 is complete. You finished, you're done, you did it, you met your goal. Completing your project is such a good feeling, but it's really not the end of your project. This is a phase in and of itself. So what I suggest doing in this phase is 2 things. 1, celebrate. Oh my gosh, you made it. Number 2, reflect. Did the timeline end up working well? What part of the project was hardest for you that you think, oh, if I just had a little more wiggle room, that would have been easier? What part of the project did you fly through way faster than you did? And what helped you meet your goal along the way? Did you have accountability buddies? Did you message me and say, hey, here's my progress? And I was like, good for you. Take time to think about what worked for you. You can apply that to your next project. So let's recap. What were the 5 phases of organizing your writing like a project? Phase 1, consider. Think through your premise, characters, and your outline. Phase 2, plan. Figure out your deliverables, set a deadline, and know when you're going to do your writing. Phase 3, create. Draft or revise that novel. Phase 4, track. Keep track of your progress and adjust your timeline if necessary. Phase 5, complete! Woo! Celebrate and reflect on what worked well for you, what was hard, what was easy, and what would make next time even better. Okay, so I hope this gives you a good framework to use the next time you're writing so that you can actually finish your novel, finish your story, and get it out in the world. If you have any questions or have used another organizational method that's really worked well for you with your writing projects, drop it below and let me know. If you need someone to cheer you on and keep you accountable as you try this method, I'm on Instagram at Megan McLean. You can find me there. Otherwise, if you want more tips on how to stay organized as a writer, hit the like button, subscribe down below, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!